My number one thing that I look for is attitude. So the majority of people I'm hiring are going to be younger. They're not going to have a lot of technical expertise. They're Most of them are going to be recent college grads. So the number one thing I'm looking for is just, do you have an attitude, like a good attitude?
G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Joe Zentmyer from Snaggletooth Goby based in Chicago, United States. Thanks for your time today, Joe.
Thank you, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. Olivia from Kit Castor has sent us many great guests over the years, so I'm really looking forward to our chat. I think you've got a really interesting journey and particularly the more recent business as well. So I'm looking forward to going through it all with you.
Thank you, Troy. It's great to catch up with you.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so my name's Joe Zentmyer. I'm a serial entrepreneur. The first business I started was First Ascent Rock Climbing, which I sold out of in 2021. And my new business is called Snaggletooth Goby, which specializes in different retail opportunities, mostly retail that has a hobbyist element to it. So right now I purchased an aquarium store that's on the south side of Chicago, and I've been slowly redeveloping and expanding that business.
And why aquariums? Is that something like a hobby of yours or more business
It
opportunity?
is a hobby of mine. I really love aquariums. But my first business was rock climbing gyms, which is also a business where your customers identify as the thing that you are selling. So rock climbers are rock climbers and aquarists are aquarium nerds. And my specialty from a marketing standpoint and from a customer service standpoint is figuring out how to service and identify with those specialist type of communities.
Right. Yeah, great. So I'm guessing you love Finding Nemo, the movie then?
I do just a little bit. It's always really fascinating to me how customers come in and instead of asking for a clownfish, they ask for a Nemo. Yeah. Yeah.
I've watched that many times with my daughter. What is it, 44 Wallaby Lane in Sydney? They're off to. Yeah. She actually played Nemo in Finding Nemo, the play last year. So yeah, she was actually Nemo. So I heard a lot of the songs last year.
Yeah. Yeah. The
And
Nemo is good for business, that's for sure.
I bet. And how did you start out? Maybe go right back. And take us through.
Yeah, so when I started at First Ascent, my first business, I had business partners and we started together. I was 31 years old, or 33 years old, and I had prior to that worked at Kraft Foods for almost 12 years. And at Kraft, I changed jobs like every 18 months or so. And I just saw like all these different aspects of business, sales, operations, finance. And I had a lot of great managers. And towards the end of that, I was just feeling like unfulfilled. And I just decided, hey, I'm going to try to start a business. And I looked at all different types of business types, and I was trying to find like a small business that I could put the capital together for and the financing together for. And around that same time, I had fallen in love with rock climbing, and I was rock climbing, and I knew that there were no rock climbing gyms in Chicago. And so that was kind of like the germ of the idea of like, well, maybe I should start a rock climbing gym. And, you know, 8, 10 years later, like I was part owner of 7 rock climbing gyms, and I had hundreds of employees, and I was running a rock climbing gym business. So that was kind of the start of it all for me. Yeah.
And what year did you start the rock climbing business?
2015. Yeah.
2015, right. Okay. And Snaggletooth, what year did you start that? You sold it you sold the rock
I
climbing
started in 21. Yeah,
after you sold the rock climbing. Yeah.
that's correct.
Yep. So you would have been 41 when you started the most recent business.
Something like that. Yeah.
And do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business, Snaggletooth?
Yeah, with Snaggletooth, so I purchased that first business that I've been working on redeveloping for the last couple of years. And probably the thing I'm most proud of is when I purchased the business from the previous owner, he just had himself and 2 employees, and I've managed to grow it to 5 employees plus myself. So just having more people working, having a team, and being able to expand into new product offerings isn't easy to do when you're jumping into a business for a first time. And it's something I've managed to do. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And with your, like, are you planning on a similar model as you did with the rock climbing, like to build more or buy more aquarium businesses, or what's the play there?
Right now, my focus is on building the revenue base on my existing location. So the business didn't have any in-home service, so monthly recurring revenue from in-home service. So that's something that actively developing, and I'm hiring the staff for. And then the second thing I'm doing is I'm selling online. So I
Yeah.
have my local store, which does very well, and then I'm adding on additional revenue streams on top of that.
That's good and very smart. The recurring revenue subscription model, that those businesses obviously get valued a lot higher. Have you read any of John Morillow's books, Built to Sell, The Automatic Customer, or The Art of Selling Your Business?
I have, but it was quite a while ago.
Yeah. His weekly podcast is excellent as well. It's just 10 years old, 500 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't on John's cast. It was on another guest I had on years ago. Chris. He's in Atlanta. He's a tradie. He's got
Mm-hmm.
a building business, and he's got a great podcast. Anyway, I heard this amazing guest on that I'm going to have on here pretty soon, and his recurring revenue model. I think you're going to love this one, Joe. His recurring revenue model is people pay a subscription for his team to go and pick up dog shit in their yard.
Okay. All right. That's a good one. It's funny. So my experience, like when I was at Kraft Foods, at certain points, I did analysis where I was trying to value like future revenue streams. And so I learned how to value recurring revenue, and I would value it higher than obviously non-recurring revenue, like incidental revenue, revenue you're not sure is going to happen or not. And as I've looked at businesses, and for example, when I looked at buying this aquarium business, I already knew how to value a recurring revenue stream versus, just incidental revenues. And so for me, that was part of the play, and part of the reason why I purchased this aquarium business was I knew they didn't have recurring revenue. And I said, hey, this is an opportunity, because there is a recurring revenue opportunity with this with us.
Yeah,
All right. And that part of what interested me in it.
Yeah. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I think part of what makes me a serial entrepreneur is I never really look at it like I'm successful. I think there's always something that you got to be working on, always something that can be fixed. And certainly from like a people management standpoint, you should always be focused on developing all of your staff all the time, and then also developing yourself. I think, as you get older, your EQ and your emotional quotient um, gets better and better, if you hope.
Yep.
Sometimes it gets worse, perhaps if your ego gets in the way. But that's something I certainly try to work on. I think the most one of the more interesting things for me, my personal experience was like during COVID, I was running, First Ascent, and we had hundreds of employees at the time, and that was a fast growing business, and then it went from fast growing to shutting down, because of COVID and like that. And at the same time, we were opening new locations or trying to. So the workload at the time, and I was, chief operating officer, the workload was just tremendous. And I think I worked from February to July, 7 days a week without a day off,
Yeah, right.
like literally. And it seemed like every weekend I would be on a Friday, I'd be like, oh gosh, I get to take my Saturday off. And then the city of Chicago or somebody would put out an announcement. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta work.
Mm.
Like, because I got to figure out how to adjust the enrollments or whatever for the gyms, or I have to figure out how I'm going to explain this to staff, or we got to deal with a social media outbreak. And I think a lot of business owners had that experience, but I sold out of that business not long after that happened, and I had the opportunity to go back and look at my notes and kind of like go through all these meetings that I had on my meeting schedule. And the biggest thing I realized is like, holy cow, I was forgetting a lot because I was so overloaded with work. Like there was so much happening and I was making so many decisions so fast that my memory of things happening was like out of order. Like generally I remember things correctly, but I would think, oh yeah, so I went from here to Pittsburgh. And then it was actually I went from here to Pittsburgh, but there was two things that happened in between. Yeah, and I just wouldn't remember the two things, or I would think they were at a different time. Um, and I think that very much affects when you're a business leader, like your interactions with people, because you're losing track because you're making so many decisions so fast. Yeah.
Yeah, the average human makes 35,000 decisions a day, and I'm sure a small business owner makes double that.
Right. And it's the consequences are higher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, than for most people.
What does success look like to you?
So I think with a business, and a particularly small business, there's kind of like a magic that happens with success where you really have a team that's working well, and the sum of the parts is bigger than the whole. And that to me is what success is. Like I really get so much empowerment out of a team that's really working well, and then seeing it generate revenue and profit. That's how I define success. I'm not one to define success based on my personal income.
Yeah. Now you've had to market two businesses. So what's the number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Yeah, I think for my particular niche, which is like hobbyists, I think one of the most important things is they have to believe in your expertise. They have to believe that you care about them and their hobby, and they have to understand that you too are hobbyists. And if they don't feel that way about you, it's just a lot harder to sell them on products.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, I know you use Net Promoter Score. Put a link in the show notes for the audience to understand how Net Promoter Score works. What's your number these days with the aquarium?
With the aquarium business, it's been interesting. I'm very big because I have an analytical mindset. I'm very big into frequent testing for these results. And so with the aquarium business, it's been tough because that business has been around since 1999 and I've owned it for 2 years. So I don't have those results from, 5 years ago. And I like to be able to compare 1 month to the next month to the next month, because I think knowing that score is changing is more powerful than knowing what the score is at a certain point in time.
Yep.
Like if your score goes down or up, why?
Yeah.
Right. And so what's been tough for me with the aquarium business is there was no systems in place to get those scores. So I have utilized, to a certain amount, I've utilized just like online reviews. And I look at that and I kind of convert those into like a bit of an NPS, like how many 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars are you getting? And then I've done 2 surveys. And so my net promoter score on the 2 surveys that I've done was about 40%.
Yep. That's great. Positive 40. Yeah. For the audience, it can be a positive or a negative the way it's worked out. One question, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or a colleague between 0 and 10? Yeah, that's great. That's a really good score. It's hard to get 40.
Yeah, I mean, and really what's nice about net promoter score is it kind of eliminates the people that have no opinion.
Yeah, the passives.
Like the way the score works. I think the passive people kind of go away. Like how many adherents to your store do you have?
Yeah. And how did you fund your business?
My first business, the rock climbing gym business, we had outside investors, we had financing, and then obviously I personally invested. And then with my new business, like it's just been financing and then my own equity.
Oh, great. Yep.
Yeah.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
For me, I do consulting where I advise people that are trying to start new businesses, and I enjoy learning new industries, and I enjoy kind of taking what is a new industry to me and comparing it to the knowledge that I have and finding the similarities, the differences, and finding the meaning in those similarities and differences. So for me, like if I had unlimited funds and I could get into any business I want, I'd want to do something different from what I'm doing now. Yeah.
Yep. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Definitely the most stressful point for me was the COVID lockdowns in 2020. And the reason why it was so stressful is, we were a retail business. We had 5 locations and we closed them all. And this was a fast growing business that was doing really well. And we were also actively developing 2 new locations at that time, while also expanding one that was already operational. So we had 3 construction projects happening and we had 5 gyms and they were all getting shut down. So we went from uh, fast growing millions in revenue to 0 in a day.
Yeah.
And so all of the kind of minor peccadillos that you have with staff, all of the major peccadillos that you have with staff, those all come out.
Yeah.
You know, and same thing with business partners. And there's just such a tremendous amount of work to be done. And part of what happens is you don't have any staff to do the work anymore.
Yeah.
Because you had to let them all go because you were closed. So that was just a tremendously stressful time. And I know I'm not the only one. It happened to a lot of. I would say probably I had 2 like super dark days, I would say, during that time. The one day, and I think this was be probably maybe an obvious one to a lot of people, would be the day that I laid off staff.
Mm.
And I personally met with via Zoom. I met with probably 25 people, one at a time, in a Zoom call. And I said, "Hey, I gotta let you go. I will rehire you. I don't know when. This is how I believe unemployment is going to work, but it's not clear right now." And just seeing how shocked people were because they had the same experience as me. It's like, "Hey, we're a fast growing business. Everything's going great." And all of a sudden, you're getting laid off.
Yeah.
So that was a really dark day. And then kind of the second dark day in a way was when I was rehiring people, actually,
Really?
because it's kind of had the opposite. Like, okay, now I'm having Zoom calls with people and be like, "Hey, like I'm rehiring you. Yay. It's been 2 months. You can get back your location and start working on it." And just seeing like the number of my staff that before I left, they were positive, they were happy, they were in shape, and then seeing them like 2 months later, and they're not.
Wow.
And like seeing the effect of COVID on them and their anxiety and their stress. It was very disheartening to me to just kind of witness that.
Yeah.
And then I think the other part of that was there was just such a disconnect for me because everyone else was kind of bored and I was letting my ass off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, wow, I'm like in a whole different universe than everyone else that I'm talking to right now. Yeah.
And did you get much of a bump from COVID once you reopened? People really embrace rock climbing?
Um, so we maintained revenue well, but what we saw was because we had multiple locations and there were changes in which locations did well and which locations didn't do well. And it wouldn't necessarily be logical to an outsider. You'd be like, oh, why would that be? But then if you kind of dug in deeper, you'd be like, oh, okay, like those businesses over there haven't reopened or they went away. So now we got to, so we saw changes. But there wasn't any huge, like, enlightening things that happened or huge revenue bumps or huge revenue declines in my experience from COVID. So, the aquarium industry, on the other hand, had like the most massive bump from COVID ever. Like, it was basically like the best years ever in the aquarium industry. Why? Because everyone was stuck at home and needed something for their home. So aquariums made so much money during COVID. And then post-COVID, it's been very tough on aquarium businesses.
So that bump would have been before you bought it, I assume.
Right. So I'm living through the trough right now. Yeah.
So do you think you overpaid for the business?
Yes, but not because of the COVID drop. I had factored that in.
Right.
I think and it's kind of classic. I think it was two things. I was probably overconfident about my ability to execute changes.
No, that doesn't sound like an entrepreneur at all.
That's right. So I think I thought I could execute change faster than I did. And then the second thing would be like I thought I would be better. I thought I thought I would be more successful at hiring people than I ended up being. It took me longer to find good people than I had hoped.
Yep.
So those two things have, and those are kind of inherent issues in that business, right? Like there was things that needed to change, and I thought I'd do better with it than I did. If had I known that I wasn't going to be that good at it, I would have valued the business less. Yeah.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think for myself, like my natural bent is to be very analytical and to be very blunt. And so people management is not something that comes naturally to me. Like I'm more like just this is just the way it is. Like what is there to discuss?
Yeah. What are we doing standing around talking? We should be working. That's me.
Yes.
Helm wide. Yeah.
So for me, like having gone from never managed anyone to having, hundreds of employees, now I have 5, learning how to adjust myself to fit the people that I have. And managing 5 people is a lot different than managing 300.
Yep.
A lot different. And in one, when you're doing 300 people, like you're thinking about, how do I make a speech? How do I write this email? When you're doing 5 people, like you're just going to meet with them. So it's just a whole different ball game and a whole different way of thinking. And you have to remember to change to suit that situation.
Yeah, that's right. Because people are individuals and you need to manage them as individuals, not as generic people. Yeah.
So, right.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
The thing that I struggle with is I love the puzzle of putting a business together. Like I obsess about it. Like, what's the best app? What's the best person for this situation? Should we make this decision? Not make this? I obsess and I get really into it, and I just really enjoy business to the detriment of my health, to the detriment of my relationships, and learning the discipline to not harm other aspects of my life. That's the tough part. And those sacrifices that I make sometimes just out of just being obsessive about finding the best way to do something for my business is the thing that I enjoy the least. Yeah.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
putting that puzzle together.
Yeah.
Like I really just get like so much enjoyment out of uh kind of like finding like the optimal solution to really make uh a team and a business well, you know. So I can remember, you know, it's funny, and a lot of retail businesses have this issue. It's like, how do you handle the doors to your business? Like just the keys. Okay, like employees got to get in at 6 a.m. No managers are there yet. How are they going to get in? Oh, you don't want everyone to have the keys. How are you going to handle that? And just like, oh, okay, like figuring out these like small little issues that actually kind of important. Like, how do people get in? How do people get out? I just get so much enjoyment out of that. And then obviously like the small things, sometimes they're really big things too. Like, you know, what's the best marketing campaign for your business, or like how many emails should you send out a month to potential customers? Um, like just all those things. I just get so much satisfaction out of it.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
You know, like so with the rock climbing gym business, when I first was starting it with my business partners, my focus was very much on things. So I was going, what's the right way to design this building? Where should the front desk go? What's the budget? What's the total dollar amount? What's color should the logo be? So I was very focused on the things, and that was where my interests were. That's what took up most of my brain power. And then by the time I got to like the third or fourth gym and the third or fourth location, like my mind had shifted to um, being focused on the people.
Hmm.
And I went from being interested in things to being interested in people and trying to figure out where I was going to get people to work at these different facilities and who are the right people and how do I define success for those people and how do I define failure um, and that was a kind of like a mindset shift that I never would have predicted, you know, because I am naturally like an analytical, cold thinker, so to speak, and a technical thinker. But I really did change from being focused on the things of a business to the people of a business.
Yeah, it's one of our beliefs here that we believe people are the hardest thing in small business and your greatest asset. Have you read any of Jim Collins' books?
No, I haven't. Yeah.
I'll send those through to you. They're great books, but the first one was Built to Sell, and sorry, that's John Morello. Sorry, Built to Last, and the second book was Good to Great, and in that, so one of my favorite quotes comes from that second book, which Jim Collins says from their 5 years of analyzing the data, basically, what is it what's the catalyst that turns a good company into a great company? And he basically summed up this quote, which is, people aren't your greatest asset, the right people are. Get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. And then you work out where to drive the bus. So the crux is, it's all down to people. It's not charismatic leader, it's not amazing product or kick-ass strategy. It's the team.
Yeah, I would say that was kind of that was a mindset shift that I had. I think in the beginning, I was being an entrepreneur. I felt like, oh, I'm going to motivate people. Like I'll motivate them. Like I'll make them do it. Wow, I am so charismatic. Don't you believe it? And after some number of years, I realized, you know what, people are going to do what they're going to do. And if you think as a leader you're going to make people do things they don't want to do, wow, you're sorely mistaken. You might get people to like fit in, into the hole they don't want to be for a little bit, but it's going to come back to you in so many ways that you'll be sorry, Um, and so letting go of that ego of like, hey, I'm so persuasive, and really just trying to get the right people. And also like to your point, like it's much easier to find right people than try to make people with bad attitudes into the right people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another one of our beliefs is that recruitment is the most important thing a manager does. Because if you don't get an A player, you know, you got a B or a C player or a toxic asshole, life is hell. And yeah, not much fun.
Yep. Yep.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think what happens to a lot of small business owners and a lot of people that I give advice to is they get caught up in the flow of their business and they start not like stepping back on a regular basis and looking at their numbers
Yep.
and also just thinking objectively about their how their decisions are playing out. And oftentimes, business owners aren't even making decisions; they're just reacting. And um, and so carving out that time to like look at your numbers,
Yep.
having preset numbers that you have decided to review and to look at, um, and then just being objective about it.
Absolutely. That is our third belief here at Grow a Small Business. That small business strategic planning starts with the numbers, because if there's no decent return on investment, why execute the wrong plan? I'm just blown away. I'm just working with a couple of businesses at the moment that haven't done their numbers and have once put a 10-year financial model together. They've gone, oh shit, we need a lot more money to grow than what we actually initially thought, because they just ran off and got all passionate.
Yeah, and it's like obviously I work on I kind of specialize in these hobbyist niche businesses, and a lot of them make no money, and um, there's still a lot of work. Like so, you might love it, but there's still a lot of work. And I advise people who are trying to open rock climbing gyms all the time. I like you need to start with feasibility.
Yeah.
And don't start with the assumption being it's feasible. Like start with the assumption it's not feasible and try to prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
And you prove it with numbers.
Mm.
You don't prove it with I got an awesome logo or I've got a great location. You prove it with the numbers. And I wish more people with that mindset for sure. Because it's uh, in any business startup and any business expansion, there's so much risk. And no forecast you do is going to be accurate. You try to be accurate, but it's not going to be accurate. So you need to be factoring that into your thinking. Yeah.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its #1 growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat.
Now, Joe, you've hired hundreds of people over the years. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
So my #1 thing that I look for is attitude. So the majority of people I'm hiring are going to be younger. They're not going to have a lot of technical expertise. Most of them are going to be recent college grads. So the #1 thing I'm looking for is just, do you have an attitude, like a good attitude? And obviously, like in an interview, everyone is trying to set forth that they have a good attitude. And so I personally just really just try to connect with the person that I'm interviewing, for example. And I typically will ask open-ended questions like, tell me about a time you faced a difficult situation. And when I'm asking that question, I'm looking to see if one, they answer with specifics.
Yeah.
Like if they give me a general answer, like that's sort of calls on the question like uh how smart they are.
Yeah.
Like smart people, they remember specifics.
Yeah.
And then it's like obviously like, are you saying something that's negative?
Mm.
Like, do you have a negative outlook on the world or do you have a positive outlook on the world? And then but it's also just important, like, am I connecting with this person?
Yeah.
I also usually try to be fairly blunt about things. Like, this is the way I like to do things. And, and I, you know, And then after a week, if they're working for me and they're like kind of pushing me out, like, well, as I told you, that's how we do things here.
Hmm.
You know, I expect everyone that walks in the door to say hello. Why aren't you saying hello to people? So I try to do that kind of combination of telling people the real me, trying to connect socially with them, and then trying to get to like what their attitude is and their perspective of the world is. So,
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
this is going to sound negative, but fire people.
Yeah, no, that's true. Got to prune the tree.
Yeah. So it takes like one toxic person to really screw things up for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to reverse a toxic person's effect. Usually, like, it just takes like that one toxic person that's, you know, working against you behind the scenes or whatever it might be, or saying negative things about you behind the scenes. That one person with that negative attitude, oftentimes you end up having to like turn over that whole group, you know. And that's probably the one thing to really don't let it go. You know, if someone is that kind of behind the scenes negative person, don't mess around with that. Yeah.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Balance in my work life versus personal life.
Yeah.
You know, the first part of it is like I do accept like during periods of time there's not going to be balance. You know, when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting businesses, there's going to be time when there's more work than there are people, and you're the owner. It's on you to do the extra work. But then you can't do that forever. And so for me, like I have like a monthly task list of things, and some of it's like really simple. Like I weigh myself every month. I check my heart rate every month. What is my mile time? And I really do those things like, hey, am I keeping up with my personal fitness even as I'm working so much? And the same thing like with personal relationships. Like, am I connecting with old friends? Or am I not? And when I get too focused on business, I don't keep up with personal fitness. I don't keep up with personal relationships, and it shouldn't be that way. So for me, it's like I really do keep a list of all these things, and I do it every month.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
A lot. And most of my personal development has focused on people management and getting better at managing people, trying to improve my emotional quotient. I pretty much do some kind of book or class or section of YouTube videos every month. Yeah, every month there's some training that I do for myself. And when I say training, I mean not like technical training, like learning more about finance or learning more about you know, a P&L, or learning more about a piece of equipment. I mean, learning more about how to manage people. Yeah.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
I have. I've had a lot of mentors and coaches.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
So for my first business, I wish that we had one, but we did not. It would have been very welcome to me if we had a board of directors. And then for my current business, like it's small enough right now that it really can just be me.
Yeah.
So, but I definitely have my group of 3 or 4 people that I reach out to ask questions.
And for the rock climbing business, so why do you say that you wish you had have had a board? Is it just because you had investors, or was it just to wrangle with business partners, or?
You know, so I had 3 business partners that I was working with in the business, and whenever you have business partners, you have disagreements and different perspectives on how to do things. And it would have been really nice to have an outside group to kind of act as a mediator. And also, like, it was such a fast growing business, and it was going fast, and we were changing things on the fly so much that it would have been nice to have people more experienced than me to like bounce ideas off of it.
Yeah.
but it's tough. Like when you're dealing with like niche businesses, um, what defines success and what causes success, I guess I should say, is a lot different than what it might be for a lot of other types of businesses. And it's hard to get good advice. You know, someone really needs to sit down with you and talk to you for a couple hours and ask a lot of questions if they're going to give you good advice on, you know, a business.
Yeah.
And so that's where like someone's really got to be in it with you, asking a lot of questions. And um, so that's definitely, there's that aspect of being a business founder or an entrepreneur where you're like, you stand alone, right? And it's hard to, you're by yourself. And I think that's certainly, um, makes getting good advice a challenge. So, yeah.
Yeah, I currently sit on 6 boards. I chair most of those. The longest one I've been on is nearly 10 years now, and I'm obviously a big advocate for them. I see a lot of value, different minds, as I like to define boards as intellectual piranhas, put an issue on the table, rip it apart, not the person, obviously.
Mhm.
And what I particularly love about it is I don't do any real work. So the GM or the CEO goes off and executes, and we just every month or whatever the cycle is, get to talk about strategy and on the business, not in it, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I would imagine for a lot of businesses, having a board that's like focused on strategy is like extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Because the business operators, um, the executives, they're focused on next week, next month, and having a group that's not really in that is extremely helpful. Yeah.
And Joe, you're one of the few we've had on that's exited a business. Tell our audience, for those that are thinking about exiting one day, any advice for them?
I would definitely encourage honest conversation if you have business partners. I think that was a struggle for my situation. It's just like having real conversations about exits. And then make sure you have good lawyers and good legal advice um, in your contracts, and like in your operating agreement or your partnership agreements. Um, they should be set up with, especially if you're a founder, they should be straight up so that there is some kind of exit for you. Whether it's, you know, the business is going well or whether his business is going poorly, there should be some kind of buyout provision in those partnership agreements. And a lot of times business founders and partners don't do that. Um, and I would say if you're talking to a potential business partner and you can't figure out how to structure that and you can't come to an agreement about how it's going to work and you're not willing to put it in paper, you don't want to work with them.
Were all 4 of you there at the end when you exited, or some had left?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think the hardest thing in growing a small business is just the pace of the decision making. And um, you're going to receive positive feedback, you're going to receive negative feedback. And the truth is, it's probably like the majority of the people and the majority of the business transactions they engage in, there's no feedback. So you're getting all this information that's on the far positive and the far negative, and probably that's not the information you really want. You probably want the feedback that's from more in the middle. And when you're a business founder, a business owner, um, getting comfortable with that. Like, oh yeah, the people that tell you you're awesome and you're doing all the best things, kind of don't pay attention to them. And the people that tell you you're the devil and everything you did is a bad idea, probably don't listen to them either. But trying to get to that group that's more in the middle, and people that can tell you, you know, that seemed like a good idea, but it didn't really work out. Like, yeah, you know, oh, I didn't really like, you know, that marketing campaign. You want the people that probably aren't so opinionated about you and what you're doing. You want to be hearing from them. And that definitely, the loudest voices aren't necessarily the ones you want to listen to sometimes.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
I really like The Magic Bus.
Haven't heard of that one. What's that about?
I think it's a book about motivating people and getting them on the bus, basically.
Yeah. Right.
And I really enjoyed that book a lot. And the author is escaping me at the moment. Or it's The Energy Bus. And it's written by John Gordon.
Okay. All right. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
For me, I like to listen to as many podcasts as I can. And I basically cycle through, and I'll listen to like one person podcasts. I think you have like 700 podcasts. I'll listen to like 400 very fast. I'm not much of a sleeper. And so I'd like absorb fast, and then I kind of move on to the next one. That's what I would tell people is like, try not to be too much of a regular. And maybe this is not what you really want to say here in the podcast. I personally think try to absorb as much information as you can from as many places as you can. Yeah.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think the tool that not enough small business owners take advantage of is like all of the online apps. Like I find an awful lot of business owners that are, struggling with basically paperwork. And it's like, you know what, just pay the $50 a month for the goofy app that only does this one thing. Just pay it, because that's like 2 hours less of work for you a month. It's worth it. Yeah, it's $50 a month, but just pay it. And yes, you got to like make sure you turn off the recurring subscriptions for the things you're not using anymore. But I find so many people that are just afraid to pay an extra $20 or whatever it is a month to avoid doing an hour of work. And I'm all about efficiency. Like, find every bit of time that you can as a business owner.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 10 years ago?
I think I would have just told myself it's going to be a fun ride. Believe in it. Yeah. And the journey. Yeah, it will be. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time today, Joe. I've really enjoyed our chat. Great journey. Left corporate at Kraft in 2015, started a rock climbing business with 3 other business partners and some investors, got to 7 sites. But as you were opening the last 2 sites, COVID hit. You had hundreds of team members doing several millions top line, and then sold that business in 2021 to then go into another hobby business, which is buying an aquarium business with plans to add recurring revenue and really expanding that online. So congratulations on the journey.
Thank you.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.